Let's head down, though, to Taylor, who's down in the pre-grid. Taylor, over to you.
That's right, I am, and I've got some of the greatest cars back from the 20s and 30s. Want to talk about vintage? They're right here. If you can check out number 7's right in front with the cameraman, but we've got car number 32 right here. This is a Bugatti, and one of my favorite details on the cars, if you check it out, is this leather strapping. This is something you definitely won't see in the modern cars to hold it down, and you've got even leather in there. How does it feel being in there? You know, kind of a stout man in such a small race car.
Are you saying I'm fat?
No, not at all. I'm saying these cars are so slim and fast, and you're kind of just out there in the open.
No, it's terrific.
Yes. And how does it feel on this you know, epic racetrack?
Yes, it's, you know, I mean, what could be better? Maybe a little sunshine, but other than that, it's perfect. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, best of luck out there. I'm going to hop over here. I was just talking to you earlier about the steering wheels and kind of this is your own personal touch to it, and they're bigger than the newer cars as well.
Yeah, well, you need a lot of leverage on it, and actually this was the way I got the car. It was somebody in the past had done it, but it's
keep it as it is.
Yeah.
Exactly. Are you excited? Looking forward to getting out on the track.
Oh, thank you.
All right, best of luck. I think they might be starting up soon, but one more. Let's check out this 111 who just fired up his engine. Are you excited to get out on there in Laguna Seca?
Oh, you bet. It's a great track. I love it.
Do you have a favorite part of the track?
I like the front half, leading up to the corkscrew.
Awesome. Well, best of luck out there. Have a great time. Let's listen to that engine a little bit. And talk about cars from all around the world. He's got a Montana license plate, so I'm wondering if this thing is street legal. We'll see, but these are some vintage race cars. We're gonna see him head out on the track in just a minute. So Johnny, let's head back to you.
Great stuff, Taylor, as always. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I just want to remind everybody there's a chance to go down and do a ride and drive with Polestar. In fact, get behind the wheel of a Polestar 2 at Velocity Invitational this weekend. Polestar are running ride and drive experiences directly from the paddock. And in fact, just a couple of minutes from now, you can get the 100% electric Polestar 2 built at Google Assistant as standard, located near the Sip and Savor Pavilion. And if you don't know where that is behind the commentary booth that I'm speaking from now, which is by the main fuel pumps. But effectively, it's just at the entrance of turn 3, but on the inside. So Sip and Savor, head over there and go down and get yourself a ride around the famous Laguna circuit. Now, this is something very special, and therefore I've dragged in Mr. Turi. Ryan Turi is here with me, one of the organisers of the event. First and foremost, congratulations. What a great day. I wish the weather was playing its way, but it will. We're about to go into our, if you like, earliest. We've had the ragtime races, but these are our first earliest original cars. And it's basically what we would call GP and Voiturettes. Effectively, before even Grand Prix racing, the World Championship at least, began, these were effectively gentleman races, but racing around the world and racing for countries, hence the colors of the cars, etc., etc. But this is something really special in history.
Exactly, yeah. Great to see you, Jonathan.
I can see you. How's it going, first and foremost?
No, it's going really well. We've got a good crowd coming in today. The weather is cooperating. It's no one's getting a sunburn, which is great.
I think the sun will come out, though.
Yeah, no, I think it will.
I will judge how the event's going by when I see you out in the historic Trans Am.
That will be next year, maybe.
Okay.
It's been a little busy, but we're really excited. This is a great group of cars, and some really great supporters in this group as well. The owner of the event, founder Jeff O'Neill's out there in the Bugatti Type 51.
Yeah. How come you got to do all the organising and he gets to drive about 5 cars? There's got to be something in the negotiation there. But in all seriousness, you guys have worked, I know, your tails off to get this back in gear. You've had COVID to deal with and all the rest of it, but we're delighted to get the 3rd iteration. I was at the first, I was at the second. What, from behind the scenes, what have you looked at and thought, okay, car-wise, we want to make different, or we want to change in terms of the discussions of what you wanted to bring the audience?
Yeah, no, great question. Thank you. I think the point of this really is for anyone who likes cars or has some interest in cars or has a loved one who likes cars, that there's something for them to see, you know? And we want folks to be able to come out for the weekend and see something new and different every day. You know, whether it's, you know, they like something like this, you know, these quite old, you know, approaching 100-year-old pre-war cars because maybe their grandfather had one or something like that, all the way up to, you know, the newest modern supercars. We've got some great stuff here. Zinger, Hennessy, Zenvo have the absolute latest and greatest technology on the supercar front. And, you know, people can really see technology from the last 100 years. So we're trying to make it appealing to everyone. And that's something that we've learned is that, you know, there's no one type of car enthusiast. You know, usually anyone who likes something with a motor, whether it's, you know, internal combustion or electric these days, they just get enthusiastic to see this stuff. So we're just trying to bring a great breadth of, you know, different automobiles and different things to see and do and interact with here at Laguna Seca.
And I think also mixed in between that, I love the proliferation now of McLaren here with Zach Brown and his team, because obviously I was reading the program yesterday, he's obviously working towards a very special anniversary for McLaren, one of the most special teams in Formula One historically. Bruce McLaren, I think if he were here today, would be very proud to be part of an event like this that celebrates design, engines. He was always a guy that was more interested. Yes, he wanted to race. Yes, he wanted to win. But it was the car. It was the development of the car, and it was trying new things. And I think that's the essence of Bruce McLaren and why McLaren are a big part of this. And I know Zach has got that in his DNA. But the chance for youngsters, the chance for race fans to get this close to Formula One cars being prepared and raced by not only double world champions, but young guys like Pato O'Ward, that they will not get a chance to do necessarily at an IndyCar race or a Formula One race.
That's a great point, actually, and I think, you know, if you're not familiar with that side of things, the Formula One as an entity and the Formula One circuits during the weekends are so, you know, closely.
Almost guarded, yeah.
Almost guarded, yeah. I don't want to say guarded, but everything is just locked down, right? There's so many people, so many teams. There's just a lot of security. It's very difficult to get around, and it's difficult to get into the paddock, into pit lane. You know, it's either very, very costly, or you can't have access at all. So, yeah, one interesting thing is, like you said, we've got Zach, we've got Mario Andretti.
I got to stop you there. We've got Mario Andretti.
It's incredible.
I mean, what? I mean, he's going to make history in about half an hour. I don't think if we haven't put the, you know, there are two corners here at Laguna Seca. One is Andretti corner, one is Rainey corner. Both those men are here today, and one of them is actually going to drive a modern Formula One car for the first time in his life, having won the '78 World Championship. I've got an IndyCar of his sitting here right next to me. He drove his last ever IndyCar race here in 1994. There's some people who are here who weren't born in 1994, and Mario's still out there. I just love that. I just want to make a point of that before we go racing.
No, I'm glad you appreciate that. I think it's so fantastic, and I can't tell you how many folks have told me how excited they are, you know, that Mario is here, and that he's going to be in a Formula One car, a modern Formula One car is really incredible. And you can walk right over there and, you know, get within 6 feet of them.
Yeah, and Mario not afraid to sign an autograph or two. Right, we have Ryan Turry alongside me, Jonathan Green, for Group 1, their qualifying race. Listen to that roar of these wonderful Grand Prix racing and Voiturettes. And if you don't know what that means, it's smaller engine, smaller displacement. These are the era back in the, mid-30s, early 30s when, well, Grand Prix racing didn't come to be, Formula One that is, didn't come to be till, 1950. That was when the first World Championship was, but of course they still raced against each other. But they raced kind of by country back then, and so your red was Italian, your green, there's a red car, but your
Alfas.
Green was British, and your blue was French, and the Germans went with the aluminium silver and so on, and so you could distinctly tell which cars were from which country, and it very much was a European affair, Ryan. I mean, that's pretty much where most of these cars hailed from, the Talbots, the Alfa Romeos, and that's really what raced in the early days.
Right, no, totally. It wasn't it wasn't that popular here until post-war, really, right? I guess servicemen came back and they were wanting to do something different, and that's when, you know, American road racing really took off. But this is primarily European, so it's great to see some of this stuff, you know, here on track. You know, the two ERAs, we've got 3 ERAs in this group, I guess, are really fantastic automobiles. I mean, it's stuff that you don't typically see running in this country. And it's, you know, we love having them here.
Yeah, that's what astounds me more than anything else, as being somebody who grew up in Britain and going to Goodwood and so on. You expect to see British cars and ERAs, of course, and Talbots and so on, and Bugattis, but to see them here in the States, and I think part of that is the American collectors, if you like, have the wherewithal to collect these kinds of cars, and also today, proof of it, wherewithal to go out and race them as well, which is even more special. But also, I think the appreciation, I think their love of the motor car. Yes, everybody wants to see a Trans Am historic car go round, but some of the aficionados would like to see and like to get amongst it with these really special cars. I was explaining earlier with Lars Mamstead about the fact that back in the day, the reason why these engines were so big at the front was a lot of the technology came from the aeroplane. This is post World War I, and so the aeroplane was up and running by then, and they were, of course, the fastest engine. Oh, there's Mario Andretti. I've just seen him.
I missed him. I keep missing him.
I don't miss him very often.
Yeah, no, you're...
I know Mario when I see him, and I'm just looking ahead, and I can see Pato O'Ward as well. Look at that. Yeah, this is an era when the cars were very much technology-wise built for speed, but the engines were kind of bulky because the technology, and actually I say the technology, but the engines themselves pretty much were pulled out of old planes and thrown in there. Now they try to make them smaller and smaller, but that's where this all started. Right,
yeah. Well, and that's a good point, right, is you see that all of these cars look different, right? And some of them are very low, some of them sit up higher. They were trying so many different things at the time. There was a lot of stuff that they didn't know. So the only way to really prove a concept, you know, they didn't have computers and they couldn't do CAD modeling and all that stuff, obviously. They had to go out and build it and see how it worked. So we've got several different, you know, attempts at that here with the different sized cars, different heights. And, you know, that's what they were doing. They were really, it was the beginning of kind of automotive engineering and racing.
Now, we mentioned ERA. We've got a 6RB and an R2A. ERA, if you were wondering, stands for English Racing Automobiles. Prior to World War II, the ERA company had built a successful business designing those cars. As we take a look at a beautiful Alfa Romeo, resplendent in Italian red, as it should be. 111, that's the Alfa Romeo 8C 2300 Monza, Dennis Bigoni.
Some of these shots are just great, aren't they?
Aren't they beautiful?
I mean, you can just see the driver. Look at, you can just watch them working. I mean, it's just splendid to
Ryan,
be able
I've got
to see
an
that.
idea for you. I think everybody should wear white gloves because you really get to see them work the wheel.
Look at that, look at that. It's just wonderful to see. Right?
And it just shows you how hard they're working too, and not frightened to get a wheel off either.
No, right, exactly. Yeah, it's that's really fun to see.
Well, when it finally comes to fruition, is this exciting or are you exhausted?
I'm exhausted.
I'm sure you are, but it's great to see it come to fruition, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is really great. It's wonderful to see all the folks here, you know, enjoying themselves, and it's for sure worth all the hard work that we put into it, and we're just glad that everyone can come and enjoy. And we've gotten a lot of great praise, so everyone who puts in work on this project, you know, should be very pleased.
And it is an interesting time in the history of the automobile, to be honest, to be doing this, because things are moving so fast. And we've got some of the modern iterations here, the hypercars. Elon Musk is doing what he's doing. Electric cars are coming fast and furious and developing. And so combustion engine racing, you know, it's definitely something from the past, but to see it here in all its glory and celebrate it, very important, I think. And so nice to be able to do it at one of the great iconic circuits of the United States. Paddings Dowling, a very familiar name to historic racing. I was at the Monaco Historics earlier this year and watched him race. I've seen Charles McCabe race and Brad Baker many a time. That's the top three in our Group 1, and they are familiar names, just as the cars are to historic racing, so they know what they're doing. Yeah, Bugattis, Alfa Romeos, a Delage, and a D6 out there. Matthew Cobb driving that one, another Californian. And we've even got a Miller-Schofield champ car out there, early days, 1932.
Yeah, well, that's some of the stuff that, you know, there was some circle track racing going on here in this country at the time. You know, and then as things developed, folks ended up taking some of the circle track cars and converting them to you know, to run on road courses. So, you know, I'm sure that we'll get a shot of that Miller-Schofield champ car, but for anybody that sees it, it's, you know, it's a little bit higher off the ground. It's a bigger car, like what you see here, but yeah, it's all about, you know, American ingenuity in that time.
I'm just looking at that number 17, 1935 ERA to R2B. So they are in full flight at the moment around our Group 1. This will be the first time we've seen these guys in action. And a combination. We've also got a Ford Sprint car out there from 1935. Max Jameson at the wheel of that one from Carmel Valley. And watching him going around. Number 11. And that's the 1935 Ford Sprint. It was raced in upstate New York on the many country fairgrounds and horse tracks. Yeah, it's an interesting point that Ryan just brought up, was that yes, they raced on dirt and oval tracks, but they also raced on wood. At some of the fairgrounds, they would race on wooden tracks. So that's something I wasn't aware of. There's that number 11. And this is the original Gulf Oil sponsored car, and it's been maintained. The car was found with the number 1 normally given to the fastest winner of its class. So presumably that's what it was. It had no roll bar originally, no seat belts, and no firewall, and no floor. Yes, the driver was looking at the ground in the Model A Ford clutch, brake, and gas pedals. How about that, folks? Yep. So the original had no floor. The yellow flags are out, so even with 6 laps to go, we've got a slight pause in events. It means that we've got a car probably stuck out on track. But not to worry, we'll get it going again, and we'll be back in action, I'm sure. But you're watching our Race 1 groups. We've seen Group 3. We've got 10 groups in all. We've seen Group 3, we've seen Group 2, and we've seen Group 1. And that takes us right back to the early days of the 30s, where motor racing was really just getting started, as we mentioned. And you can see these iterations. Look at that, with the handbrake on the side. Sometimes the brakes on the outside. The exhaust definitely on the outside. I don't know how, if you put your hand on there, that would feel. Be very careful indeed. That's the sort of thing I'd do. I'd burn my elbow without thinking about it. It's funny, actually, we talk about, that's that 132, that's the Miller-Schofield. We just mentioned the champ car, Miller-Schofield, very nice indeed. Going through his paces. Yeah, that Miller-Schofield, John Kerr at the wheel of that. The car was found as a complete wreck in the 80s. Not the exact history is fully known about it, but it was probably toiled at the many dirt ovals in the West at the hands of journeyman drivers. And it's been driven to many a vintage event since 1998. So very special history there to find it almost out of nowhere, that Miller-Schofield champ car. So good to see it out there. and doing what it's doing. So we're under caution here in our Group 1. Charles McCabe was leading the way ahead of Paddock Dowling. There's the 16 Railton Light Sport Tourer. Look at that huge car. Absolutely glorious. Hadn't had a chance to mention that. Yeah, and that Railton Light was from New York City. Ivan Zembara from New York City has been with the company for 28 years. Started as a mechanic and started out doing restorations. And besides the old cars, he's interested in the philosophy, history, and music, art, and literature. There you go. A little bit of news about the man driving the Railton Light. So we're under caution in our Group 1. Whether they'll complete some more laps, I'm not sure, but we'll find out. And I can feel that the day is heating up. I can feel the sun starting to come through here. So wherever you're joining us, welcome to Velocity Invitational. So then, we are under caution, and as you can see, the trucks are out on track. We're just following the safety car or pace car around as Charles McCabe leads the field. Paddock Dowling in second place and Brad Baker in third. Like I said, three very distinctive names in the world of historic racing. And yeah, it's we celebrate the cars, but we should also celebrate the drivers, because the guys who are doing it are effectively some of the best historic drivers you could imagine. And no question, they know what they're doing. Some great racing coming up. I just saw Mario Andretti heading towards the McLaren pits, which is good news for all of us, because we'll get to see the mighty Mario in action as he heads towards his own very corner, turn 2. I don't know why they call it turn 2, because turn 1 here at Laguna is really just a kink. It's just a sort of crest at the top of the hill. So, but it is, that's the way it is. I have to say, actually, at slow speed, it's quite a nice way to look at these cars, because you can actually see them a little closer. I mentioned that Railton and the 1935 Ford Sprint, the number 11, also coming through shot. And there's ERA. Interesting enough, with the Thai flag, I wonder if that's got anything to do with the Birras. They were very prevalent back in the day. The early days of Grand Prix racing. But if you think about the cars that were, if you like, relevant to this class of Group 1, as we're calling it, which is 27 to 37, you're talking Aston Martin, Austin 7s, Bentley, Bugattis. We've got the Bugattis out there, BMW, Chryslers, Duesenbergs, Delage, we've got one out there. Lagondas, even Lancias, Mercedes-Benz also, and the Morgan. That Railton I just mentioned, Riley, Singer, Sunbeam, Jaguar, Talbot. Those were the sort of cars that were good examples of the Class A2 from 27 to 37. And then you've got the Grand Prix Voiturettes, the smaller Grand Prix cars, effectively Auto Union, Bugatti. We had a few Bugattis out there, Millers, Maseratis, Frazer, Nash, and ERA, who we were talking about earlier. And of course Talbot and Mercedes-Benz. So lots of examples, but just a few here on display as they come. Now the pace car's coming in, so we should get a couple of laps on a restart. So away we go, and coming into the booth, Ryan Turi, of course, is organising the event, so I can't keep him very long. But Alan Benjamin, There you go.
Hey,
Good
how
morning.
are you, everyone? Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome.
Thank you.
What brings you to this prestigious event?
Well, it's just absolutely fantastic. I love racing Laguna Seca. I've been coming out here since the late 90s.
Good for you.
And I've had the fortunate privilege of racing Goodwood a couple of times, Le Mans Classic a couple of times, and all I can say is the cars here remind me of that. It's wonderful since I live in Colorado to only travel 1,000 miles and not all the way across the pond to see stuff like this.
Well, let me ask you that. I don't want to make direct comparisons because that's unfair. Goodwood is, it has been going for so long, for one
Right.
thing. Two, it's the home of British motor racing. And of course, so many of these cars from the early period were European. But, I mean, what Ryan and Jeff O'Neill are trying to do here is quite unique. It's similar to what they've built at Goodwood. And I do think it's a step in a different direction for historic racing. And I do like the way they're going about it. It is a different atmosphere.
Yes, totally agree. And even having the cars paddock the way they do is fantastic to see all the different cars together. A lot more camaraderie of the drivers, mechanics, and crew together. And hopefully the weather continues to cooperate. We don't have any more delays like we had yesterday morning for the rest of today and tomorrow. And everything is fantastic.
It's always Laguna Seca. If they can't have a foggy day at Laguna, it's not Laguna, right? So
Absolutely.
Are you racing? Are you playing?
Yes,
What are you doing?
I'm racing in Group 5, a 3-liter RSR.
Ooh.
Whose very first race was here at Laguna, May of '75 with Jim Busby, and
Nice.
Al's first race car. And then I'm racing in Group 8, a 68 TR. That's both a Sebring and Daytona class winner.
How did you get into historics in the first place? What enticed you into it?
Well, let's see. I'm 58 years old, and when I was 7 years old, my mother filled out my Road and Track subscription.
Did she really?
And my second grade notebooks are horribly drawn Porsche 911s. They don't even look like a VW Beetle. And that was always my dream car.
Doesn't matter.
And got into it at that point and bought my first historic car, which was the 3-liter RSR. And I've been coming out here with it every year since.
Well, I can share my 7-year-old story then, because when I was a little boy, my mum insisted on laying the table, as typical Brits do. So every dinner we had to put table mats down, but the only way she could make me do that was if she got the car table mats. And I had to have the green 33 Bentley.
Perfect.
That was my table mat. I didn't want the Bugatti, I didn't want the Alfa Romeo, I wanted the Bentley. That was
Very
mine.
proper car for you.
And then I would sit down and I would eat. That was one way to get me to the table.
Fantastic. This looks like a great group coming up.
Oh, yeah. We've got a bird's eye, absolutely fantastic view here in the commentary booth. We decided to move the commentary booth out to be with the people and with the fans here today. And I think it's a great step because we're right on the pre-grid, looking at some Porsches and some fantastic cars getting ready on the pre-grid to go out. I mean, I know you're a fan. You just said it, and you've been a long time, part of this world. But what do you get a thrill? Is there cars that you sort of go, oh, look at that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so much more for the older stuff that you wouldn't see anywhere else. Some of the fantastic period Ferraris, the Porsche A-Bars, the Carrera-powered 356s, just some amazing stuff, down to some of the older Alfas. And I even like all the muscle cars. I've got a pretty eclectic taste when it comes to cars.
I think that's the beauty of it, is that since I've been around historic cars, I've started, you start with your go-to, and then you sort of get an appreciation for ones that you didn't expect to have an appreciation for. And there's no question that I've certainly started to get a much bigger appreciation for the 50s and 60s sports racing cars and the development of them and how that transition between Europe and sort of almost that war of and how the Japanese fitted into all of it, because they sort of watched they sort of watched the Americans and the Europeans go head to head, going smaller and smaller displacement, lighter and lighter cars, Lotus, etc. And then suddenly the Japanese said, I'll tell you what, we'll beat both of you with a really high-powered small car.
Yep.
And they did.
Absolutely. And it's
we'll
also great to see the big V8 American Trans Am cars to wrestle those around here. All the drivers are getting a heck of an upper body workout at Laguna Seca.
Oh, no kidding. And I love to see the Minis versus the Mustangs too, because the juxtaposition is there, but it also proves what I was just talking about, which is, the Minis are small, but they get around the corners fast.
Absolutely. It's amazing how sometimes with massive differences in displacement, engine location, even front-wheel drive to rear-wheel drive, the lap times aren't all that different.
Now, Alan, we've got you to come and talk about Group 4, which is coming up after this. And so we've kind of sneaked you in here because we had a bit of a delay. But do you still appreciate these cars as well?
Absolutely. You think of the engineering that it took to make them go, the speeds that they did, and especially the, I'll use the politically correct term and say the guts of the drivers it took back then is absolutely amazing.
Well, I was talking to Ryan about what's great about when you see them close up, and our cameramen are pretty much specialists when it comes to motor racing, so we can get a nice view. But you see the tiny little inputs that they're doing on these big, big wheels, and that's how skillful you have to be in order to drive these cars.
Absolutely.
And Laguna is a challenge at the best of times, never mind in a historic car.
As they say, when the tires were thin and the drivers were not.
Yes, they were certainly brave, that's for sure. So what's the funnest car you've driven?
Oh, boy. That's a really good question. Probably the
one that took your breath away.
The one that took my breath away is a 2017 mid-engine pro-level RSR I got to drive.
Yeah.
And I never realized the neck muscles it takes to be pulling 2Gs and cornering and braking for a car such as that. And to be able to sit where the pros sit and obviously drive it at a little bit more sedate pace, but put it through its paces was phenomenal.
I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, because we keep talking about, we use the expression gentleman drivers, and we are looking at some of the world's finest cars here, and some of the world's fastest cars. So you mentioned 2G, which is a lot of G-force on the neck, but not as much as some of the most modern cars are. But that's another factor in historic racing, is that professional racing drivers are often committed to a lot of their year in helping gentleman drivers get the best out of themselves and bring them along so that they can become competent race drivers.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a mental component to it, a physical component to it, and it does take a lot if you just want to keep increasing your abilities and hone the craft.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, Paddington Dowling making his way around. He got ahead of Charles McCabe. This is the final lap of our Group 1 coverage. Paddington Dowling, a well-known factor in the world of historic racing. Of course, the Irishman, but now lives in Irvine, California, and has raced this 1936 ERA at many an event, both here in Europe and here in California. So he knows this car all too well, and not a surprise to see him winning in the R2A. I think he was at Monaco earlier this year, so he gets around. And I think he has the perfect life. He goes around the world and races his cars.